You're listening to the Pulled by the Root podcast.
Hello, everyone. This is your host, Heidi Marble. I am so honored to have psychotherapist Soll on our podcast today. I learned about his dynamic work from many of the adopted people that I've been interviewing. Joe is the author of 4 adoption books called Adoption Healing: A Path to Recovery. He is a lecturer, internationally recognized, and an expert in adoption-related issues. We're just so glad to have you here today, Joe.
Thank you. It's my honor.
Oh, gosh, Joe. So when I got your book and I opened it, the first thing I saw was your dedication. And this is what it said. To my natural mother, whoever and wherever she is, with love. And to all those who either are or were missing in adoption. I had never heard anything stated like that, missing in adoption. The body of work that you've created over your lifetime is so significant. I know we have Clarissa Pinkola Estes in common. She is the author of The Women That Run with the Wolves. Do you want to talk about your adoption story first?
Okay. When years ago, when I did my first march on Washington for open records, and we were walking down the Route 9 in New Jersey, and a Mercedes pulled up in front of us and stopped, and the guy got out, and he obviously wanted to talk to us. And he asked us what we were doing, and we said we were walking to Washington from New York. And he looked at me and he said, "Why are you walking?" And I said, "Because I'm adopted." And he said, "You don't look adopted. You look like you come from a good family." He was a New Jersey politician. We're looked at as aliens, as third-class citizens, like we come from bad stock. And people don't recognize that we have all endured the worst trauma that a child can endure, losing their mother. And if I say that to somebody, they say, "Well, you got another mother. What's the big deal?" But if I said to somebody I was kidnapped at the beginning of my life, then they would say, "Oh my God, that must be so painful." Well, if my mother didn't have a choice, and I don't believe she did, then I was kidnapped by society's rules. So then that's a trauma. And so we've all suffered a trauma.
Absolutely, Joe. One of the things that you were saying that really stuck with me as well is you're talking about the fracturing. And if I can read one more thing from your book, and this also ties in Clarissa, you say in your introduction that adoptees are caught between conflicting messages. They are stuck in an emotional limbo, unable to accept either their inner private reality or fictional reality presented by those around them. Inside of the integrated whole, the adoptee's sense of self splinters or fractures into separate pieces. Since adoptees must function in the outer world if they are to survive, their inner world can become increasingly repressed, eventually slipping out of reach. Survival is purchased at a heavy price. However, for without access to their inner feelings, adoptees are unable to live authentic lives. And here is Clarissa's quote that's embedded in this paragraph. Through her soul requires seeing. The culture around her requires sightlessness. Through her soul wishes to speak its truth. She is pressured to be silent. Neither the child's soul nor her psyche can accommodate this.
She's right. So how does a child deal with a huge loss when they're not allowed to talk about it? Because our adoptive parents, and I'm not blaming that nobody told them what we needed, but our adoptive moms do not want to hear about my other mommy. Adoptive moms do not want to hear I'm angry that I'm here and not with my other mommy. And we know, children know what they're not supposed to say without even being told. So we have this huge pain. It's a death because when a baby is brought into this world and their mother's not there, they experience that mother's death. Literally, psychologically, they experience that death, and experience it in their body. And our mothers experience the death of the baby that is missing now, but nobody can talk about it. what do you do with the death if you're not allowed to talk about it? It paralyzes you. The saying is, ungrieved losses paralyze lives. If I can't cry about the loss of my first mother, I have to shut down to survive, because nobody can live with that pain. So my unconscious mind protects me. And if I don't, and this is the quote from the book, if I don't get to talk about it in the age of cognition beginning, roughly 7 to 9, if I don't get to talk about it then, I'm going to shut down and not be able to talk about it ever without a lot of help. And there's a wonderful book called The Abandoned Child Within, which has nothing to do with adoption. She talks about what happens to children who can't talk about their pain, who can't talk about their emotions, and how they shut down. And when they're adults, they often lose the ability to have any awareness of what they're feeling consciously. It's not that they don't feel, they don't have an awareness of it. It takes a lot of work to deal with this.
Yeah, Joe, and that's one thing I really wanted to sink in with you. There's so many people in pain that would like to be on a path of healing. And how do we take charge as adopted people of our lives and our own healing so that we can have more peace?
The only thing I know of to do is therapy. And everybody in the world could use some therapy anyway. And we just have to have specific therapy that from someone who understands this huge loss. Anna Freud's quote, the horrors of war pale beside the loss of a mother. And I was thinking about this the other day because I heard something on TV and somebody said, remember the quote, war is hell. Well, if I substitute war is hell for what I just said, Anna Freud's quote is, the horrors of hell pale beside the loss of a mother. What do you do with that? And it's true. People who have suffered huge traumas can't talk about them. Policemen often can't talk about the things they see every day, the horrors they see every day. They can't talk about it, and they don't. And it's common for, at least in the literature, that police and other first responders, if you will, who see horrors, they don't go to therapy. They go to the bar at the end of the day. And I'm not blaming. I mean, they don't know what to do with their pain because it's too terrifying to talk about. And that's the problem. We have to learn little by little with someone who understands that it's safe to talk about the pain and cry about it and rant and rave and fume about it and let it out. The danger is keeping it in. And we adoptees and our natural moms have been taught to keep it in. Everybody talks to themselves. Everybody, one way or another, they say things to themselves. They say, "Yeah, you'll get through this. I think I'm going to have candy for a snack," but they say it out loud in their head, and then they go do it. That's called inner child work. Everybody does it, and it's just not focused. And what I've done in my book is to learn how to focus it for us adoptees, to learn how to comfort our 7-year-old self and visualize our 7-year-old self and go give our 7-year-old self a hug and say, "I love you when you're safe. And it's okay to cry about losing mommy."
Oh, yeah, Joe. In fact, one of the things, I'd love it if you would talk to us about one of the visualizations that you speak about in your book is when you start to spin out of control, you can look around and anchor yourself in your physical environment. And that has been really helpful to me. Can you walk us through what that looks like?
Panic attacks, anxiety attacks. For trauma victims, that usually means that something has reminded you of the initial trauma, even though you're not aware of it, and you think you're going to die. And so what you do is literally you look up and you look left and you look right, and you look forward and down, and you see that you're not in any physical danger. What you do when you see you're not in physical danger is you say out loud in your head, "Nothing is happening now. I know it feels like it, but I just checked and we're okay." And we means the adult and your inner child. You may have to repeat it a couple of times and say the word relax, but it will calm you down. And it's something you have to practice and you learn it. I had to learn how to do this because of my panic attacks. Panic attacks are common for trauma victims, anxiety attacks. And it's an antidote. Also, we need to learn how to talk to our inner child and tell our inner child that she or he cannot be abandoned. Because abandonment is one of the things that terrifies us as adoptees more than anything else. So we need to look at our adult lives and say, wait a minute, can I be abandoned? Can I be put on a desert island without food, clothing, shelter, or anybody else? Because that's abandonment. Is that going to happen to me? No. Well, then I can't be abandoned. I can be left, and that's sad, especially for us adoptees, but it's not abandonment, and I won't die. I will hurt. But I need to remember what I survived without anybody helping me. I lost my mother. Nobody helped me. Right? I survived. Wow. So I am a survivor. I am a warrior. But it's true. This is what we've done. We are survivors of a horrible trauma. And in a way, it's the worst trauma in the world because nobody recognizes it and we can't talk about it. That's what makes it so bad, aside from the physical loss of mommy. So we can learn how to talk to ourselves. And if I can stop being afraid of being abandoned, my whole life changes.
Joe, that's so true. I'd like to drill down a little bit with you because I'm having a hard time separating being left and abandonment. Like what is the definition slice between the two of those things? Because being left, it feels very much like abandonment.
Okay.
So help. Okay.
If we were placed anywhere so that we would be taken care of, then our mothers didn't abandon us. If our mothers didn't have a choice, and I believe that most natural mothers never had a choice at all, then they didn't abandon us. They put us somewhere in an adoption agency or with a lawyer or with somebody to take care of us. That's not abandonment. Abandonment is being put in a trash can and put the lid on. Okay. Then the baby's abandoned. However, there's a paradox here because our experience was of abandonment. From the baby's point of view, the baby's all alone. That's abandonment from the baby's perspective. So this is our terror. So we have to explain to our 7-year-old self that mommy did not abandon us. Mommy didn't have a choice. Mommy made sure we'd be taken care of. We got to talk in a 7-year-old language, but we were not abandoned. And because trauma victims always think it's going to happen again, we need to make sure our 7-year-old self understands it didn't happen. But there is a paradox here because we weren't abandoned, but we experienced it.
Yeah. And another thing we talked about, Joe, on our last call, we talked about anger. And I love how you put the word D in front of it for danger. And what I've worked out for myself and also listening to many adopted people, because we aren't able to express the feelings, we internalize them. And I believe in my case, my anger actually turned into depression and fear. So tell us about anger. And you also have a really great way of dealing with anger in a healthy way.
Okay. First of all, the book Primal Wound, which I think everybody needs to read. When a baby, leave adoption out, when her mother walks out of the room, the baby is going to get angry and turn red and howl with rage because mommy's not there anymore. On the first day of life, what does a baby do but turn red and howl with rage at the pain of being born? So we start off with this rage at losing our mothers, the rage that every baby has when mommy's gone and mommy doesn't come back. So this rage becomes nuclear. It becomes dangerous. So we all have, whether we're aware of it or not, primal wound rage. It's there. Mommy left me. The baby doesn't have any, we don't have any way of understanding it. And there's no child in the world who would not be angry at knowing their mother didn't keep them. And a 7-year-old doesn't do gray. 7-year-olds, black and white. You left me, then it's my fault. I'm unlovable. Your fault for leaving me, and I am so angry. Okay, what am I going to do with it? I have to keep it down. So if I have to keep in all my pain and all my anger and all my sadness, it takes physical energy that burns calories to do that. It wears me down. And I believe it's a state of depression. But it's not clinical depression. Because as soon as I have a regular outlet for my pain or my anger, anger, and sadness, I'm not going to be depressed anymore. If I can say it. And I need to be able to say how much. I ask people how angry they are, and I say 1 to 1,000,000. I say, give me a number. And they will often say 1,000,000,000,000. Because there's no number in the world that can express how much anger or how much sadness we have.
Oh, gosh.
Did I answer all your questions then? I don't know.
Yeah, you did. One thing I'd like to add to that I felt was really important is you were talking about productive ways to express your anger in a physical way as well. So you've talked to us about the emotional way, but you actually say doing something positive physically and moving it out of your body. Like for me, my vacuum cleaner, I go through 1 a week probably.
Okay. So there's several ways to get rid of anger. And I'm going to use the one you just asked about last. If I talk it, I'm getting it out of my body. If I journal and write about it, I'm getting it out of my body. If I make a list of all the things I'm angry about and write them down, and I need to get one of those composition notebooks that are black and white on the cover, I probably need a whole book for all my anger. Because I think about everything going back to the beginning of my life, and I make a list. I am angry because, or I'm angry that, and you have to write those words at the beginning of each sentence. I'm angry that, or I'm angry because, etc. Okay. And the last thing is to use the anger physically. So if I can learn how to vacuum, channeling my anger, I say the following out loud in my head. I'm going to take my anger and use it to clean my house with the vacuum cleaner today. And then you start immediately doing it. And what happens is your unconscious mind will process that request. And it's a request when you say it out loud in your head. I'm going to take my anger and use it too. Then your unconscious mind will take the negative energy, the anger energy, and use it to do the chore. And all the energy you would have used is left over. All the good energy is left over. And you have less anger in your system, so it takes less anger to keep it contained. You get a triple payoff. And it's not, when you channel your anger into doing a chore, somehow the chore doesn't become a chore anymore. It's just something you do. You know what I'm talking about? It's easy.
100%, Joe. And I know that I am not alone in having used my anger in negative ways, in ways that are not only self-destructive, but hurtful to others. And I think having another option, another way to think about it, another escape for the anger is such an important thing for us to consider for our own healing.
Yes, and there's more, because people are afraid of their anger, or they think they shouldn't be angry. Well, that's not so, because if we didn't have anger as human beings, we would not survive as a species, because anger is what protects us and gets our adrenaline going in danger. We're back to that danger word again. Anger protects us when we're in danger. So there's nothing wrong with saying I'm angry that I wasn't able to be raised by my mother. Why shouldn't I be able to say that? And there are going to be people who say I shouldn't, but there's nothing. Look, way back, I raised my fist at my therapist and I said, I am so blasted angry, I want to hit you. And she said, well, that's anger. And I said, no, it's not anger. I didn't even know I was being angry. I had no clue. We need to learn that it's okay to say, I'm angry because, and what we often do is, especially in a love relationship, is we don't say we're angry at our partner, and then whatever we're angry about, they do it again. Instead of us being able to say, I love you, but I'm angry that you burned my toast this morning. And for our partner to say, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, I love you too. And it's done. But if I don't say it, then the anger goes into my anger pot. And eventually I get so much anger in my anger pot, I explode at the wrong person for the wrong reason. And we need to be able to talk about these things. So I'm glad you brought it up.
Well, thank you so much for talking about that. One of the other things in your book that is so noteworthy to me is actually toward the back. And you talk about mourning for adoptees, that grief process. And I'd love to talk about that a little more, because every society, almost every situation where you lose someone, there's a ceremony, there's a ritual, people gather around you, they bring you casseroles, they call you, they love on you. But we're left with this huge loss that we are unable to grieve. So what can you speak to that point about mourning?
Well, let's go back to what you said about the people coming over. They come to you and they acknowledge your loss. If they bring you the food and the casseroles, they say, I'm so sorry you lost your mother. And you must be sad. Let me comfort you. And they do this for a while until you have enough food in your freezer to last you a month or 2 months. But you need that. And then you have a ceremony in your house of worship. And then you have a ceremony in a cemetery, perhaps. And all of this helps you cry. It's all ugly stuff, but it helps you cry. You need to be able, the ceremonies are nasty. They bring up a lot of pain, right? When you put somebody in the ground, you throw dirt on them, it makes it real. And then over a period of minimum of 2 years to fully grieve the loss of a loved one with all this societal help. And we don't get any of that. We have to stuff it. I don't get at the age of 7 to say, I'm so sad I don't have my mommy, and have anybody say, I'm so sorry you lost your mommy. I wish you could have I wish you could have stayed with her. And why don't we light a candle for mommy? And you know what? Maybe we can cry together. But we don't get any of that. Not that anybody knows to do it, but it's what we need as children. And it would have made all the difference in the world. And somebody needs to do that for our mothers too, to come to them and say, I'm so sorry you couldn't raise your baby. You must be sad. Let me comfort you. So what do we do now? We have to find a way for us as adoptees to go learn how to work with our inner child and go to our inner child and say, let's cry about mommy. And we lost mommy. Why don't you sit in my lap and I'll hold you and you can cry with me. And that'll bring it up for both. We can go to a church and cry. But we can, one of my clients years ago, her brother, who was not adopted, but that she grew up with, was a minister, and he held a memorial service in his church for her losing her mother. It made all the difference. Yeah, it made all the difference in the world for her healing, to have somebody to have publicly acknowledge what she lost. We don't get that, so we have to find ways to do it for ourselves. If for those of us who found a grave, we need to be able to do something even extra, because what do you do? I have a video on my website about finding a grave. How do you deal with that? How do you cry about someone you didn't know consciously? And if you tell your friends what you're doing, they'll look at you like you're crazy. We need to find a way to cry no matter what it is. And so we need to journal, perhaps. We need to write a letter to, whether we've had a reunion or not, write a letter. Let our inner child write a letter to mommy, to the mommy that we don't know, and let her pour her heart out, or him pour his heart out. That's another way to do the grieving. It takes a lot of time and a lot of energy, and we must do it. Everybody does their grieving in their own way, but we have to find a way to grieve and grieve and grieve. What I think works the best is to do soul crying. When you let yourself curl up in a ball and sob in a fetal position.
I might not have heard of it, but I've done it a lot.
Yeah, I made up the word soul crying. I don't know what, but I've done it a lot too. And we need to be able to do that and know that it's not going to kill us. If we can let the pain out, we know it's not going to kill us. If we can say that, I need to do this, and then curl up in a ball. It's nice if we can have someone in the same house or apartment with us as we do it, not in the same room, but so that we know we're safe. It is one of the ugliest things, part of our healing, that we have to do, because my grief therapist suggested to me that our brain cannot make sense out of it, that it is cognitively impossible for our brain to understand not growing up with our own mothers. And I've had clients of mine, and I know it was the same for me, who'd say to me, well, I know I had two mothers, but that doesn't make any sense, because it doesn't. That makes it even harder to deal with, because every time you think about what I just suggested, it causes trauma. I think personally that every one of us adoptees and our natural moms is a victim of complex trauma on trauma on trauma on trauma, because everything that reminds us of a mother or a child will raise the trauma for me. Every time I'm walking down the street, before I did my work, and I would see a mother pushing a baby carriage, how can it not remind me of what I didn't have? Or the same for a mom seeing somebody pushing a baby carriage. So every time this happens, it's trauma for us. And so my belief is we are all so strong to have survived. As Clarissa Esty said on her DVD, those who have been, quote, abandoned and work it through are the strongest people on the face of the earth.
Oh.
So we experienced abandonment, and our mothers were abandoned by society. So to be able to face this pain and do therapy takes incredible strength.
I do agree with you so completely that the strength required, and the strength that I've witnessed, and I'm sure you have too, it is truly inspiring.
It takes a lot of courage to face your demons.
It does.
And that's what this work is. Go
No,
ahead.
no question. Yeah. So the other thing, Joe, before we start to wrap things up, in your book that I absolutely love, it's in your appendix, actually, not the one in your stomach, but in your book, what adoptees do not wish to hear. And I want to go on this track with you, because part of the problem is that we're not seen and heard. And then society or people, probably unintentionally, will say things that just confirm that. And if it's okay, I'd like to read a few things from this list, and let's talk about it. So
by all means,
go.
and then by all means, but I want to go back to the special, chosen, and lucky.
Ooh, yes.
So go ahead, then we'll go back to that.
Yeah, hold on to that thought. So here, let me just give you the first 10. You're special because you're adopted. You were chosen. Your natural mother loved you so much that she gave you up. You're lucky. It doesn't matter. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be sad. You should be careful what you ask for. You might get it. By finding her, you're invading her life. Why are you interested in someone who didn't want you? That's just 10 out of almost 40.
My best friend said that to me, the last one, when I started the search. He said, why would you want her? She didn't want you. And what I should have said, but I wasn't mature enough search-wise, I should have said, you knew her? So
yes, Joe.
But let's go back to special, chosen, and lucky.
Let's do it.
And you said each one of those. Anytime anybody says any of these, then it makes me, how do I think about that? I'm special. What makes it's going to remind, every time they say it, it reminds us of what we lost. So every time somebody says any of these things, it stirs up our trauma. And I know people don't know what they're saying, but we have to, and I have that in my book, The Special Chosen and Lucky, or no, I have a video on it. Sorry. We have to be able to look at those in therapy and say, wait a minute, and talk to our inner child and explain to our inner child that people didn't mean, they didn't know what they were saying. I am not lucky. How am I lucky to not grow up with my own mother? Chosen? Who chose me? And Betty Jean Lifton said to me long ago, well, if I'm chosen, who unchose me? I had to be unchosen to be chosen. Okay. And if I'm so special, why am I not with my own mom? This is, it's hard for, how can a child make sense of this when an adult can't make sense of this? Know, the quote from Keith Griffin, adoption is the only trauma in the world where the victims are supposed to be grateful.
Yeah, it's just kind of mind-blowing to me, Joe, that as intelligent as human beings are and as open as our society is to the underserved issues, that this issue around adoption, or the issues around adoption, there's just seems to be the blinders on.
I think because I don't know if you read in my supplement book or not. A quick story. I went to the local mall maybe 10 years ago, and as I got out of my car, an ambulance pulled up, and they started to unload a bunch of children in wheelchairs who were all cerebral palsied. And I wanted to run so fast. I was terrified. And I didn't run. I walked as quick as I could. And I went inside the mall and sat down and thought about it. And what I realized was I didn't want to think about what it might be like to live a life in a wheelchair like that. And then I thought, well, then I guess a lot of people don't want to think about what it would be like to live a life without their own mother. And they can't tolerate the thought. It's too traumatizing for them to even begin to live with. And so they don't talk about it. And most adoptees, and I believe maybe 1 in 1,000 of us is willing to do the work. And I have statistics to back that up. It's a rare adoptee and a rare natural mom who's willing to do the necessary healing because it's so painful. Who wants to think about it? I don't want to think of it. It's trauma. And my brain doesn't make sense of it anyway. So, and we live in a society. I don't know if you've read the, or if you haven't Googled it, When Infertility Goes Shopping.
No, I haven't.
Google
what
it.
A title! What a title!
I didn't write this. This is a mom, a woman who's not an adoptive, is not involved in adoption at all. A mother who I know who lives in Australia, who wrote a book called Death by Adoption. And this is one of the articles or one of the chapters from that book, and she gave me permission to reproduce some of them. And if you Google it, you can find it online, When Infertility Goes Shopping. And it talks about the mania. And look, I don't know how, I know it's got to be terribly painful to not be able to bring a baby into this world. I cannot imagine how painful it is. But adoption is not the answer. It doesn't take away the pain.
No,
only if you pretend. And people don't want that pain, and they want somebody to take away the pain, and they want to raise a baby. And there are people who will do anything they can to get a baby. And
that's truth.
It's part
so
of,
true.
So we live in a society, we live in an adoption manic world.
Yeah.
But there are countries that have outlawed adoption.
Yeah. So change is a coming.
You betcha. So they have realized. At my last conference, I had a psychologist from Holland who came and spoke about how and why Holland stopped adoption from within its shores.
Mm.
And there's other countries in that part of the world that have stopped it from within.
Yeah, I love that, Joe. And as we wrap this up, I love to end on a hopeful note. And I do think you've given us a lot of hope through this episode. We've talked about acknowledging the anger and the pain, and that getting therapy is necessary for healing. So many elements to that. But what would you like to speak out to the beautiful audience that is listening? What hope can you give to those who are really in pain? How can we increase the number from 1 in 1,000 to more people? Because the payoff, Joe, that payoff has to be a more peaceful inner world.
If we do this work,
yeah,
if we do the healing work, we can achieve peace and contentment.
Oh, please.
Peace and contentment. We can have that, all of us, but we have to do the work. As they say in AA, no pain, no gain. I have to face my pain. I have to go to the dentist. It hurts. I got to do it. There's lots of things I have to do, but this emotional pain is so terrifying. And the only thing I can promise is nobody dies from doing this work. It's more likely to kill us if we keep the pain in. It'll affect our body, and we're not going to have as good a life as we could if we just go do it. So I have something to end with. People talk about Pandora's box.
Yes.
And how terrifying it is to open. But the true story of Pandora's box is that when you let out all the demons, what's left is hope.
Joe.
An adoptee therapist, a friend of mine, wrote a book years ago called Pandora's Hope. And if you Google it, you can find it.
Mm. Oh, Joe, this time with you has been extraordinary. I could talk to you for days. I personally want to thank you for all the good that you're depositing into the world.
You're welcome, and thank you for allowing me to vent forth my thoughts.
Oh, anytime, Joe.